Thank you for our viewers for tuning in for another edition of Energy Dialogue Podcast. We're coming to you live and direct from the third Oil and Gas Conference here at the Mercury Hotel in Windhoek. Today we are joined by none other special guest Unathi Magida, the Executive Manager for Communication, Stakeholder Relation at Petroleum Agency in South Africa. This is an opportune time to welcome her as well. Thank you again for meeting you after we've met in the panel discussion. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Max, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. Just a small snippet on the good work that you did in previous, just as a precursor to your background. We've also picked up that you spearheaded good initiatives like Pitch and Polish, which trained over 10,000 aspiring entrepreneurs across South Africa through workshops and practical support, and many other like championing of community-focused initiatives and so on. Can you just briefly maybe touch on your background?
Thank you so much. So my name is Unathi Magida, and I'm really the executive head for communication and stakeholder relations for the Petroleum Agency. And I guess this fits in perfectly with my previous life, where we realized that all investments, whether it is from upstream oil and gas, midstream and downstream where I come from, they have to be done in such a way that you embrace the country that you operate in, and you also empower the locals and create a win-win situation. So with that strong background on supply chain transformation, black economic empowerment, and really developing local entrepreneurs, it really has assisted the companies that I've worked for in the past in terms of entrenching themselves and also in terms of growing together with the communities that they work from. So it is the very same kind of approach that we want to bring into the upstream oil and gas industry, which is emerging in South Africa, and we hope that we will have a very broader involvement of society in our pursuits to develop oil and gas in South Africa.
Thank you very much for that. Just moving away from your past life, coming back to your role that you play at PASA, and what brings you to the conference, to the third oil and gas conference here in Windhoek, Namibia?
Well, one of the most important things that we have noticed is that Namibia is indeed a brave country. Oil and gas is not new in Southern Africa. We have seen a lot of attempts back in the 40s around oil and gas development. But for some reason, it has evolved. As technologies advance, and as we build the right professional caliber of people across all countries, now we're starting to see a lot of interest in oil and gas. And I must say that the investment that we have made in promoting Southern Africa oil and gas across the world has yielded good results. So we're seeing a lot of interest from big players across the world wanting to invest both in South Africa and in Namibia. So when Namibia hosts a dialogue and a conference of this nature, it gives us an opportunity to really benchmark best practice, look at success cases from different countries, and hear what the experts are saying about the way we should go about making sure that we have sustainable oil and gas development in our country as well. And as you know, that South Africa is still budding when it comes to oil and gas. We've got a lot of potential. Lots of oil discoveries have been made, and we're estimating a lot of oil and gas that is available both onshore and offshore South Africa. So it's only good for us to actually benchmark from the best and see how do we make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that others have.
Absolutely. It's actually what was shared in one of the panelists that said perhaps it's also an advantage for a country like Namibia to be a late starter, because then you have that opportunity to benchmark yourself to those ones that have already evolved.
Absolutely.
The countries, and so I couldn't agree more with you on that one. But in general, what would you say, how has the oil and gas, I think you've touched on it already, but the landscape of the oil and gas more probably in South Africa, because with us, as you quite rightly say, we've been exploring, but not yet commercially viable crude oil has been found. But hopefully we'll move from exploration now to the development stage. We're still waiting for the FID, the final investment decision.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, how is the landscape in South Africa, perhaps in that context?
So I think we're building momentum in terms of laying a very good foundation for oil and gas development in South Africa.
Absolutely.
We are currently legislated through the MPRDA, which is the Mining and Petroleum Resource Development Act, which provides for the establishment of our mandate as the petroleum agency that looks at the regulation and the promotion of the industry. But a new regime, a legal regime, is coming. Last year in October, end of October, the president signed off the new upstream Petroleum Resource Development Act, which means that we are now being carved away from the mining piece of legislation. We have a legislation that focuses specifically on the upstream oil and gas development, which means now that we now have our own regulatory system, and we've just put on guidelines. The Department of Minerals and Petroleum Resources has also issued guidelines that support the Act now in April. So there is, from the legal side of things or legislation side of things, there is a lot of progress to really put a spotlight on this emerging industry. Lots of work has happened in terms of really identifying where the resource potential is across the country, and we're very thrilled at how much South Africa has in terms of oil and gas, both onshore and offshore. I'm also quite proud to say that recently the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Minerals and Petroleum Resources has just released a gazette or a notice that says, let's look at the acreage in the onshore Karoo Basin, which means that we are now starting to assess where gas is, the natural gas is onshore. So that gives us an opportunity to understand exactly the geology of the Karoo, so that we can understand what are the minerals that can be found in the Karoo, and compare our assessment, digital assessment around the resource capacity that we have in the Karoo with the exercise that is being that is underway between PASA and VETS in terms of assessing the geological potential of the Karoo when it comes to natural gas. So all of those things are really a sign for South Africa's intentions to really bring a spotlight to this most important industry, which will be a catalyst for economic development for South Africa. In fact, we see it as one of the big industries that are going to change the complexion of our country.
Excellent. That was excellent. Just maybe to supplement what you said, we also had a discussion with the Presidency's office yesterday. So the Petroleum Act also used to be in the Mines and Energy. Now it has been shifted to the Office of the President. And I think that goes along with the local content policy that has been, they said draft, but that's still contingent on the legal framework. So I think it's more in line with what you said, but not entirely complete. But just moving on, I just wanted to know how the PASA delegates, we know yesterday we had the masterclass, and today we had the yesterday we had the technical conference where we have different delegates and so on. How did the PASA delegates find the masterclass, especially centered about the debate around local content?
So for us, I must say it's one of the most valuable times that we have spent in this conference, because we're busy shaping our local content strategies as the Petroleum Agency with the new law that has come to fruition now, and also combining, the existing BBBE, which is Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, the social labor plans, and everything else that we have learned here. Taking from best practice, we will obviously take what's good and what's applicable, and that could be adapted to South Africa, and bring it home to the policy developers and see how they actually weave that in to ensure that localization or local content is maximized for the benefit and made inclusive for all the stakeholders within oil and gas in South Africa, including communities and interested and affected parties.
Yeah, well, that's good. I would just like to gauge you, perhaps, maybe to our viewers out there that are listening, maybe just from a general context. What do you think, with your experience from Engen and coming to PASA, what are investors actually considering or looking at in coming into the oil and gas sector, especially in the South African or Southern African region? What is it that really matters? Is it policy? Probably is it skills, capacity building, or is it the infrastructure? What do you think investors are really interested in before they set foot in terms of investment in the Southern region?
I think the simple answer is the resource potential.
Yeah.
So what we have done since 1999 as PASA was to do an extensive analysis of our resource potential and mapped it very well and marketed very well to global investors. So that is their main point of attraction. We don't have much infrastructure yet because it's a new industry for us. But we see, in fact, investors are very, very keen to invest because of the fact that they will be starting from grassroots and they will be building the industry. And I guess that's a very good challenge for them. And of course, there are existing few existing infrastructures, for example, the current Petro SA pipeline, which is sitting closer to the Block 11 B12B in the Southern Cape. That kind of existing infrastructure could also be an attraction to the likes of Main Street, which is now looking at investing at Block 11B, 12B. So they are interested, even though they know that there isn't a lot of infrastructure, but pockets of infrastructure across South Africa. Yeah.
Excellent. So how does PASA work to balance investors' interest with local empowerment? Because we know local beneficiation, it's a recurring theme in the panels that we had, in terms of skills, in terms of supplier participation and capacity building. How does PASA balance that investors' interest with local empowerment focus?
That's built into our regulatory regime.
Okay.
So the application processes go through very rigorous processes in terms of environmental compliance, making sure that they are sustainable in terms of...
Sorry to interrupt, you also mentioned BEE policies.
Yes.
Are those perhaps not maybe measures that has been put in place to empower the locals, and maybe many other policies?
Yes, yes, including SLPs. We have built-in SLPs for investors as they progress with the applications, obviously.
Yes.
When they start looking for environmental authorizations, then they have to give us some kind of an indication of how they will grow with their locals in terms of making sure that they support the locals through SLPs currently. And also it's quite easy for us to just weave in the current pieces of legislation into our application processes, just to make sure that they cover, for example, one interesting part is that whilst they're applying is that they assist in building talent pipeline for future experts in the industry. So we're starting to build capacity and skills development through the investors. So there is a kitty, which is called the Upstream Training Trust, which is a fund that is a collective of all the investors where they put in their commitment fees, which is regulated by the Petroleum Agency. And with that trust fund, we are starting to build professionals that will work in the upstream oil and gas, just like Petrofund. So we issue about 80 bursaries a year just to make sure that we empower locals and we train experts like geoscientists, petroleum engineers, data analysts, and all these key disciplines that will be required as the industry blossoms. So that's another part of long-term investment to our local development.
Wow, that's excellent. So the kitty, is it separate from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, or is it just perhaps maybe a component that PASA is using to empower the locals?
I like the idea of a sovereign wealth fund. It would be lovely for South Africa to get there. I mean, we see how important it is in the Norwegian environment. It is not yet a sovereign wealth fund. It is an education trust, just to build a pipeline of professionals and technical skills that will be required for the industry as it blossoms.
Okay. We're almost about to wrap up. So, Unathi, just moving on, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing the regional oil and gas sector today?
My biggest nightmare as the head of communications and stakeholder relations, it literally is our biggest nightmare, is the pushback that we're getting from the environmental NGOs who are often disguised as climate change justice activists. And sometimes it's not because they're concerned about the environmental impact of what oil and gas can do to the ocean ecosystem or to the environment, but it's mostly about being anti-development. So we are constantly faced with litigation in South Africa. Each and every exploration right is challenged in South Africa by for example, I don't want to mention their names. I don't want to give them airtime, but very active NGOs that are determined to make sure that they stifle the development of upstream oil and gas industry and push the single agenda of cleaner, energy solutions, which is very much against the South African Integrated Energy Plan, which advocates for an energy mix, which means that we have an accommodation for all types of energy technologies that can support the sustainable development of energy and energy security for the country. So it's neither the one pole nor the other pole, but it is a continuum of all technologies that can support energy supply in South Africa.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's actually good to speaking about technology, because that brings me to my next question. So how important is technological innovation in terms of exploration and developing the oil and gas sector? I know you mentioned cleaner energy, and you also mentioned some other concept. Innovation in the oil and gas sector, how important is it from a technological point of view?
It really is important. I mean, I was very much impressed with the research that's being done at the agency by the scientists, the geoscientists. So the research that was done in the past, in the 80s and the 90s, does not give them accurate impressions of what is happening down the deep at the deeper side of the oceans as well as on the ground. So the advancing technology gives them better impressions in terms of geological impressions of where is the oil and where is the gas. So it's always good to keep up with technological developments, both from a data management point of view, because data is our richest resource, which allows us to be able to say we have this kind of resource, or we don't have it. So we literally are very supportive of innovation around technology, and we know that AI is also going to bring in another dimension around the advancing technologies. especially it will assist us with our data management strategy. So we still don't have a very clear pathway around that, but we know for sure that we're still work in progress here.
Still work in progress, yeah. So I know part of your presence here is to foster collaboration, smart partnerships. We also have a Namibia Petroleum Corporation here. But the question is, how does PASA engage neighboring countries like you're doing now to ensure mutual beneficial outcomes? I know not only Namibia, I know Angola is also busy, and in the southern region, perhaps maybe Northern Africa and globally.
So interesting you asked that question. So over the past 3 years, we also, in fact, I think Namibia learned from South Africa.
Yes.
So we have
the babies. So they say when South Africa sneeze, we get a cough. Or something like that.
Yeah. So in the past 3 years, we started putting together a platform for Southern Africa oil and gas conversations or dialogues. So we have an annual Southern Africa Oil and Gas Conference that seeks to build such collaborations, and is literally looking at Southern Africa, not the Southern Hemisphere as such, but just Southern Africa, because we need each other. We've got an interconnected continent, and we really have to work together. So you'll have Mozambique, Namibia, Angola, Swaziland, having a dialogue on how do we really build energy security and sustainability for the southern globe. So it is quite important for us. So again, here doing a lot of networking with all the countries, and also learning from similar, regulatory entities from other countries. We've met the Nigerians, we have met Trinidad and Tobago. There's lots of learning from there. There's quite a number of contacts we've made in terms of just benchmarking and seeing how we do things in South Africa, and learning and also teaching them how to do certain things as well.
Absolutely. Just before we close, last question. I know you mentioned Petrofund is looking after scholarships in terms of building capacity and workforce development and so on. But to the young person and the SMEs and the entrepreneurs out there, what steps perhaps I would just like to bring it across from SA, especially what you're doing there for young people to become part of the mainstream oil and gas emerging sector? What would you say, just from this is now your personal view, what should young people do? We know education is key. We know there are a lot of gaps that needs to be filled from technical aspects. There's logistics, there's operational support. There's so much happening around the value chain that young people can take advantage of. What is your message to them?
So we've already started building partnerships with the youth. The future of any country is upon the hands of its youth. There will come a time where we don't exist and they will have to lead the country. So we've already started teaching them about what the country resources look like, and we also started teaching them about the resistance that we are facing, so that they can understand both sides of the story and be able to make up their minds. That's the first part, which is knowledge sharing and knowledge building in terms of both sides of the equation, whether it's anti-oil and gas or pro-oil and gas, so that they know exactly what they want the future of the country to look like. So we're involving them in such conversations. We're inviting them to our workshops. We run information sessions. So knowledge for us is power. Secondly, we are also collaborating with entities that are looking at complementary skills development for the youth. So we've partnered with the likes of the maritime industry of South Africa, which is really looking at building youth capacity in the maritime industry. We're also looking at the ocean economy. There is an entity called the SAIMI, which is South African Institute for Maritime Studies, which they really look at all related skills that will be needed both in the upstream and also in the ocean, or rather in the ocean economy as well.
Yeah.
So there are complementary skills there that we are looking at building with SAIMI as a joint collaboration.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what we're doing now, and we see the youth as a very key engine to drive
Yeah.
the future sustainability of the industry. So we can't do it all by ourselves
Yes.
without involving the young ones.
The young ones, yeah. Just maybe in closing off, final thoughts, and maybe what is your outlook for the Southern Africa oil and gas sector, perhaps maybe for the next 5-10 years, and then maybe just any other closing remarks that you might have before we close it off.
Well, I think we've got a lot of opportunities as the Southern Africa. A lot of discoveries have been made, which means that we've got very rich indigenous resources, both from an oil and a gas perspective. I think we need to start working together. We need to start influencing policy makers and decision makers to really put oil and gas at the center of their discussions so that they can get support. I was inspired by the fact that there is even a unit in the presidency here that's looking at upstream oil and gas development. Those are some of the important lessons that we pick up from this conference that I think we need to take back home to say, if we were to actually move and build on the back, from the back of what we have, we need to have a dedicated desk in the highest office of the president that says, look, we've got this blessing of so much acreage around oil and gas in this country. That can be able to help with our economic recovery, that can help with our economic stability, that can help with socio-economic transformation, that will help boosting the country. Shall we try and support the industry from the highest levels of policy decision making? So if we have something like that, that will take us very far as South Africa, and we can be able to start influencing the rest of the departments in terms of their role in making sure that the industry is supported from a transport perspective, from an environmental management perspective, from a trade and investment perspective, and also from a treasury perspective, because if we don't fund the industry will not go anywhere. So from that point of view, we've learned a lot, and we want to say that the future is bright. It is just upon us to do the work.
Yeah, the sky is the limit.
The sky is the limit, indeed.
Thank you very much, Unathi. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I know the viewers out there also did. Thanks for sharing your insights, your expertise with us today. It's been a pleasure exploring opportunities around the energy sector, and we're looking forward to our next engagement. Hopefully, you'll be hosting us.
Hopefully, yes.
And to our listeners, please stay tuned for more updates at the third Oil and Gas Conference here at the Mercury Hotel. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and all the other social media links that we have. And till next time, thank you.